Software Underbelly is about truth-telling. It's about creating a space for stories on society's most marginalized that venture beyond our own biases, which is why Ground News is the perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where sensational headlines flood our feeds, some of the most important stories get overshadowed. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, which gives an on-the-ground perspective that might be missing from national coverage. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by serving you every article published on any news story worldwide, plus data about its credibility and where it may fall on the political spectrum. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. Their election coverage was a great example of that. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage plan easily helps me keep up with the more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Right now they're offering 50% off their Vantage plan as a limited time offer. Their platform is also subscriber funded, meaning that when you subscribe through my link or even gift it to someone you know, you're helping to hold the media accountable and you're helping my channel. Thank you very much.
I'm still young. I'm still young, Buck. I feel young. I think it's really your perception of what age is, right? For me, it's like, I don't feel old. I feel matured. I feel wiser.
It's almost like you're living a second life. You've like transformed yourself.
Really? I thought of a book that I wanted to do titled Afterlife, The Afterlife, right?
Because who you were for the first, 35, 40 years of your life is different than who you are now.
Literally after the life sentence. So it's kind of a double entendre, right? People think, oh, after life, it's reincarnation, right? Or when you go to heaven, the afterlife, right? But it's literally after the life sentence. That's what I think I'm going to write about. Not about the mob, not about the blood, the guts, and the grit and the gore, because that was my whole life. And I really want to write about this story, about the reclamation of one's humanity and how difficult that process is. The realization that you were nothing more than a monster and a beast, right? And coming to terms with that. And then resolving that. For a lot of people, it'll never resolve. I am the monster. I am a beast. I am a manipulator, a betrayer of the code, and I could never undo what I have done. And I realize that. I can't undo the harm that I've caused, but I think in one's reclamation of his own humanity, there is a realization that you can do good. I think that that's important for every man, woman, and child as they mature and they reach that pinnacle in their life where they want to be something different. And for too long, social media has defined me, and traditional media has defined me, and law enforcement has defined me, and gang groupies have defined me, and I've never defined myself, and that's not what I'm trying to do now. I just want something on my epitaph to be more than he was a mobster and he dropped out. I think every man in the ultimate hour, in the final analysis, wants there to be something good about themselves, something good and true and real. And that's what I want to do. I want to do something that is impactful.
It was interesting what you said in the previous talk we did. How you said all these gang members are basically just people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
People pleasers that like you never would think of these people as being that.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't think of. I mean, if you look at it in the hierarchical structure, that's perceived to be. These are apex predators. They walk with swag. They're ferocious. They're violent, and they've proven so. Right? They've reached this point in their career where they are icons in the gang subculture. Kind of like being a senator, right? There's an elite amount of senators in the United States. There's 100 senators, right? 2 per state. And the mob, there's a finite amount of mobsters. And these guys have reputations. I mean, some of them are wallflowers. Some of them have never killed, never picked up a knife. They were made for whatever reason they were made. And being made means being inducted into the organization. And those guys, they are who they are, right? But there's buttons in there. There's guys that have put in numerous hits, and there's guys that have put in work and done wet work, and you would be hard pressed to look at them and say that person lacks self-confidence. And I think what you're seeing is the narcissistic personality that they've replaced that lack of confidence with. They've created this alter ego who is Boxer. Boxer, who I used to be, was this ferocious guy that, would kill you just because, right? But the reality was I was a trembling, afraid person. And you can call me coward all day long, but I'm okay with that. I'm an alive coward, and I'm a happy coward, and I'm a free coward. But I think most of those people that live those roles, and I can't say with a paintbrush, one stroke, say all of them lack self-confidence, but the majority of gang members, they gravitate towards gangs because of that lack of self-confidence, that low self-esteem. And they create this nickname and this alter personality, right? This gang member type, braggadocious, brave, courageous guy, because that's not who they were as children. And their experiences, however traumatic they were, led them to create this alter ego, this persona that they now become that literally consumes their entire life. And it's the unfortunate reality that by the time they're 40 or 50, they got a life sentence and they're pelon from San Gabriel. And I'm not saying anybody specifically, I'm just using an analogy, right? I'm not identifying people here, which I have no problem doing.
But they become institutionalized.
They become institutionalized. They incorporate this as who they are, and they know nothing more than that. They stay stuck in this specific area that they've created in their life, and they can't transcend that. And I think that's what's really sorrowful about this. That's what's really shameful about this life, is that most of the guys think that they're living up to a code, that they're staying true and staying strong. But that's fallacy. That is truly fallacy. There's no truth to that, because there is no honor among thieves. There may be some guys who have dignity. They have some internal dignity, but that honor among thieves and that camaraderie and that brotherhood, that's known as carnalismo. It means brotherhood, like in the organization. That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. You may have a couple of friends in the organization. Mine were Black Dambrella and Wadoshai Shrayak. Those are my Ace Coon Booms. Those guys are my real friends. And you could do no wrong in their eyes. And that's how I was brought up in the organization. Like, you could do no wrong. Chuco Castro was another good friend of mine. He was a really good friend of mine. Daryl Baca was a really good friend of mine. But all that falls by the wayside in the midst of politics. So I look at it like that, that doesn't exist anymore in the organization, that brotherhood and that friendship. It doesn't exist. Business and mob don't mix, because somebody's always going to be greedy. Somebody's always going to want what you have. They're going to be jealous because you make more or you exclude them from a specific deal. It's just that way. I mean, you look at the principle of the organization, right? It's a disciplinary organization. They're supposed to be the pillars of discipline within the Hispanic gang subculture and the prison subculture. And you look at these guys out, they're really disciplined. They work out. Some of them don't use drugs, but the majority do. They speak Nahuatl. They study the culture. They're well-read, some of them, traditional forms of literature, like The Art of War, Sun Tzu, 48 Laws of Power.
They're more educated than you would think.
They're more educated than you would think. You got guys reading Machiavelli, the Prince, right? They're voracious readers. That's all you have to do in prison. People say I'm articulate and intelligent and all that. I'm not. I am not this articulate, intelligent guy. How smart could I be if I went to prison for 3 life sentences and chose to stick a needle in my arm for the majority of my adult life? How smart could I be if I abandoned my family for a group of individuals who wanted to kill me. I mean, how intelligent is that?
But how have you become this civilized, refined person now?
I just think it's that you mature, you grow up.
You just mature.
You just mature. You educate yourself, obviously. I mean, I used education in there.
Because it's hard to believe. We were talking off camera. There was a situation where you were in court and you pulled a pretty large... Tell the story.
The key string. Everybody's fascinated with this thing. I don't know why.
Well, these kind of stories are fascinating.
Well, the human being is...
And it's hard to believe you were once this person.
The human being is the only animal that will place something in its rectum for either gratification or survival, right? And in this story, it entails a little fun fact. I don't know where I picked that up at, but I read it somewhere, But the normal mode of transportation for weapons and contraband is body cavity. And your mouth isn't big enough for a knife. And males only have one other orifice that would accommodate a weapon, and that's the rectum, right? So it go through a process called keystring, where you wrap a weapon in cellophane and first pad it with toilet paper, wrap it in cellophane, heat seal it, and then you insert it in your rectum. Well, the story was that an individual by the name of Henry Carlos, Indio from Sereno, was placed on the hit list. And it was all the dealings of Daniel Grajeda. Daniel Grajeda was a primary politicker in the organization, and he was finally deemed no good, and his entire family was placed on the hit list as a result of his politicking. But this was a result of Henry Carlos's stabbing Daniel Grajeda about a year prior to this. I got to the county jail in Los Angeles, and they were politicking, campaigning essentially against Henry Carlos, and it was Daniel Grajeda that led the charge on that. And but when Black Dan Barella, one of my very close friends, told me, yeah, he has to go, then I took that as gospel. This is one of the guys I trusted most in the organization. Like, he was my quasi-padrino. A padrino is an individual who vouches for you in your induction and becomes responsible for you. He's your sponsor in essence, right? So my true sponsor was Corwin Elmore, Sloppy from Glanton, at the request of Black Dan and Wadoshai Shryak. So when Black Dan told me to whack Indio, I jumped at the chance. I was one of those eager beavers, willing to please people, kill people, to receive acceptance. And the status mobility system in the organization, which is unfortunate but true, is violence. You guys have college and civil commitment and community commitment, and you elevate in your social strata through those institutions in the organization. It's not your ability to articulate. It's not your intelligence. It's your willingness to kill for the organization and go to death row. That's the status mobility system. That gets you there, right? That gets you recognized. So for me, I realized that, I had just finished participating in 2 murders, and I was facing adjudication of those cases to the court system. And while in the county jail, this pops up, Indio. So I agreed to do it. John Stinson, AB member, was supposed to go with me on this hit. Little known fact.
Aryan Brotherhood.
Aryan Brotherhood. He was a close friend of Daniel Grajeda and his co-defendant on a murder case that they originally suffered conviction on like 15, 20 years before. But John Stinson was supposed to go on this murder with. He did not. I ended up going to court, got subpoenaed to court that day on a humbug subpoena. It was just an individual. I said, subpoena me on this day and subpoena him on that day, the target. So I go about inserting the knife in my rectum. I go to court, and I'm in court in the holding tank. And this is at a period of time when they put everybody in.
How big is this knife?
About 6 inches long.
Is it hard to walk?
No, it's surprisingly easy. Believe it or not, I carried one for 5 years, every day. slept with it, worked out with it, the whole 9 yards.
Up your ass.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't describe it in such graphic terms, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. It's you have to have a knife. You have to have a handcuff key. If you don't, you get caught slipping. So yeah, I take the knife, and you know, I want to say this just from the get, right? That this is not glorification. You know, I'm regretful that happened to Henry. It was a mistake. It was politics. He had done nothing wrong. In fact, he did everything right. He had previously hit Daniel Grajeda. I mean, if that can be considered right in societal perception, right? But in this society, he did right. He stood up for himself. He stood up to a titan, and he whacked him. And then he got whacked for it, which was all based on politics. So I want to say that this isn't glorification. I'm not gloating about it. I'm not trying to pick off scabs off people's wounds or reopen those painful.
I just find it interesting that you were once that person and now you are who you are here. I find that fascinating that you can be such a different version of yourself.
Yeah, somebody told me that the other day. So you dress nice. You know, I jokingly said lipstick on a pig, right? Lipstick on a pig. Everybody's heard that phrase, right? Mm-hmm. You know, some things I can never undo. I'll always be that person in some people's minds. But I know there's more to me. There's more to me than just being a killer and a mobster and all the other things they call me. But yeah, Henry Carlos was stabbed 29 times.
What was the situation where you pulled out this knife in the court?
Well, I had pulled it out prior to his getting to the tank. I got there before him, so I pulled the knife out. I went to the toilet. I pulled the knife out, and as soon as it hit the toilet, they're metal toilets. Everybody in the holding tank looked. They knew something was going down. So I unwrapped it, and I waited for him. And as soon as he walked in to the holding tank, there was like 3 or 4 deputies, sheriff's deputies. I ran up to him, and I started stabbing him repeatedly. And I pinned him on these built-in wall benches. I pinned him there, and I continued stabbing him until I heard to my left, the deputy says, "Get the gun. Go get the gun." And it was then that I stopped. Because they were yelling, "Stop, you know, throw the weapon down, lay on the floor," you know, just all those command presence phrases that are supposed to get your attention. But in a hit, you don't listen to that. You listen for a chambering round, or you listen to get down, right? Because you know the gunner's yelling it, "Get down." You know, you got maybe a fraction of a second after that. So I continued doing it until I heard the guy come back with a weapon. And then I ran to the toilet and I flushed it, the knife, and he stood up. And I'll never forget what he said. He looked at me dead in the eye and says, "You ain't done nothing." And he walked out. And I respected that man so much for that. He was a hog. A hog is like a badass motherfucker in our world, right? He was a hog. He took it like a man.
You didn't kill him.
Didn't kill him. He didn't whimper. He didn't yell. He didn't squirm. He took it.
Did he understand that it wasn't about you hating him? It was about just some order?
Yeah, he understood that. I mean, this is the mob. You know, when you get hit, it's not about personal stuff, right? Most of the time it is, based on personal bias, right? But this was just business.
How many times did you stab him?
29 times.
29 times.
27 times. We stabbed Mon 29 times. Another hit that I did in the county jail in front of deputies as well, right after that. But I respected that man so much because he looked me dead in the face, and you could tell there wasn't an iota of fear in his being, right? His being was just that of a mafioso, and he projected that. And I respected that. I never told anybody that, but I remember he looked at me and says, "You ain't done nothing." And then he just walked out. And that was it. He went to the hospital. They took him to USC Medical Center, and that was it. We heard that he survived the attack, and then that was that hit. But yeah, I mean, carrying knives around and other contraband in your body cavity, that's pretty normal, you know? That's pretty normal. That's not, I guess to the average Joe in the community, like a carpenter, you know, he's not going to take a chisel up his ass to go to work to do his work, right? Or a doctor's not going to take a scalpel up his ass to go do surgery, right? But in the mob, you know, this is the way you do it.
In prison.
You know? In prison, yeah. There's no need to do it out here. God forbid, unless you're into that kind of thing.
Most of the craziness that we hear about is our prison antics, right?
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff on the streets too. I mean, there's some murders, and a lot of murders have been happening, and a lot have happened in the past. One truism about the organization is that it kills people. It kills people. This isn't the Boy Scouts. The mob is the mob. It's called the Mexican Mafia for a reason. It's a mafia, right? It's not as advanced as La Cosa Nostra or Yakuza or Thieves in Law or some of the other organizations like the Armenian Mob. But the Mexican Mafia is truly in its nascency. It's in its birth state. If you look at the Yakuza, it's been here for almost 600 years. Russian Mob, Yakuza been here, I think over 1,000 years, and the Russian Mob 500 years, right? And the Mexican Mafia is about 70 years old. 70 years old. So it's really in its initial phases, right? And you look at it for what it was, right? A prison gang. It was a prison gang, a group of apex predators who were the top of dangerous people in California. And they formed this group. They were really just teenagers in the youth authority at the Dual Vocational Institution in Tracy, California. They came up with a concept and said, let's make the Mexican Mafia. And I don't think anybody anticipated what it would become. And I think there are spurts of growth in the organization that brought it to where it is today. And it is truly different from what it was yesterday. And I think that evolution will continue because it's such a dynamic group of individuals. And there are so many individuals that it continues to change because there's a high rate of attrition. The objectives of the organization change. The priorities of the organization change. Now there's peace treaties among all rival gangs in the Department of Corrections in California. Not in the federal system where the Mexican Mafia exists also. But in California, there's a holding peace treaty. There's a no hands policy on law enforcement, correctional officers. That doesn't apply here on the streets, but it does apply in the CDCR. Hitting cops is bad for business. And having race riots is bad for business. And there are individuals who are sworn enemies of the organization now walking on the yard with them in unison, doing business with the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Black Guerrilla family members, NR, Nuestra Raza. These individuals are all participating in business with the organization. So it changes, and it's going to continue to change. I think one of the most dynamic things that have changed within the organization is a hierarchical structure. The feds have a commission, and it was ran by 3 individuals in the past. Right now, there's one individual who's in the seat of power, which is Raymond Shryock. And in California, there's a group of individuals. It began as 13 individuals, right? Hence the number 13. It has alphanumeric correspondence to the 13th letter in the alphabet, which is M in the English alphabet, and pronounced in Spanish, M. So there's that correspondence, right? But that's since been whittled down. So there are a group of guys pushing policy in the organization within the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation in California that are the de facto leadership of the organization. Will that last? I believe not. Because you have a group of individuals who are, again, aggressive, dominant, narcissistic, and they don't want anybody telling them what to do. Particularly having the weight of life and death in the balance. If a group of individuals has the weight and power of life and death over other mobsters, eventually that will be abused. I think we've seen multiple examples of that already in the past couple of years with the murders of a variety of individuals in the CDCR and on the streets. And because they're open cases, I won't name them, I won't discuss them. But yeah, you'll see those abuses. There's a hierarchical structure. And I think one of the things that changed in the organization was the ridding of mesas. Mesas were ad hoc commissions comprised of non-members, basically sureños and camaradas, right? And there's a clear definition of those two things, which I need to put out there right now, right? Every 17, 18-year-old you hear now in prison, he's a camarada. self-professed camarada. And traditionally, a camarada was an individual who was known to the organization, put in work for the organization, had years of association with the organization. There were camaradas and associates. That's what there were. And now, every swinging dick in prison is a camarada. So they say, right? But that's not the case. They may consider themselves camaradas, but the organization does not consider them camaradas. And that's the difference. There's a really, again, that status mobility system for gang members to elevate from resident, which is an individual who is Hispanic but not a gang member, but has family members or lives in a gang-influenced area. There's a Southsider, an individual from a gang that's traditionally or historically loyal to the organization. There is a Sureño, who's an individual who's voiced his willingness to participate in violence or has participated in violence for the organization and has adopted the ideology of the organization. There is a camarada, which is like a hair away from being made, and even those guys, only a few of them are going to be made because it's such an elitist group. And then there's a carnal, a made guy, right? So there is a social strata within the prison and Hispanic gang subculture. And I don't want to name the organization a prison gang because it's not that anymore. This is a criminal syndicate that controls a vast amount of participants in the gang world. So there are a lot of changes, and I'm always asked that, like, how do you stay up on all this stuff? And it's discipline. It's what I do. I'm a subject matter expert and expert witness. I'm a lecturer. I teach, and that's what I do.
You explained to me earlier that you are not an informant. You're an expert. You're an expert witness.
Have I acted in that capacity? Am I debriefed and all that? Sure. That's what you do when you debrief. And here's another thing. People talk about they didn't have to debrief. I've listened to so many social media postings about people saying, I didn't have to debrief. I just told them I wanted to go PC. And that's not the case. That's not the case. And not everybody's a dropout, right? They all say, I'm a dropout. You had to drop into something before you drop out. So dropouts are guys that were really in the business, right? Those are the real dropouts. They're classified by the SSU, the Office of Correctional Safety, as dropouts. Because you defected or you went to PC doesn't make you a dropout, right? And everybody who goes to PC has to tell the cops, hey man, my life's in danger. I need to get off this yard. I need to be protected and go to SNY, Sensitive Needs Yards, which is a fancy acronym for protective custody, PC, right? So everybody that's done this is told in the past. I'm not trying to make what I did look any better. I don't really care what people think about that. I truly don't. But I hear all these guys rationalizing their decisions, right? Like, oh no, I PC'd, but I didn't tell on anybody. You had to tell on somebody to go to PC. You had to make that initial contact with law enforcement, tell them who the individuals were who were a threat to you, what you were being threatened for, and why you needed protection. It's basic. Some people do not have to debrief because they did not have a role in the organization. That defines a dropout. If you had to participate in the debrief, you're a dropout. You're a dropout. But even on the lowest end of this, you had to go tell on somebody. You had to. It's just the way you get out. And now that is largely abandoned, that policy of debriefing to get out of the shoe or whatever the reason was, Now they've rid the California Department of Corrections of indeterminate shoot terms. Debriefing is not the norm anymore. You can become inactive through classification if they receive no confidential information or behavioral documentation that indicates your gang participation. They classify you as inactive. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. I think it's important that people hear that because there's so many people that have these misconceptions about what a dropout is, what a sureño is, what a camarada is, whether they had to debrief or whether they're really dropouts. And in the grand scheme of things, I think you're seeing the majority of the prison population become SNY because people are living in droves. The active individuals in the organization, the mobsters and the camaradas and the sureños, they're a minority now. They are a real and true minority. And I part of what I said last time was that there's an alternative life, you know, and I think it's sad that some people can't see that, and will never see it, you know, and I truly meant, like, I mean, that's what you want to be, then be all you can be. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody, but the consequences of your actions are death in prison. No other alternative. There's no retirement plan. You're going to die in your cell, an old man, or in the medical ward, or the infirmary, they call it. Or you're going to get whacked out. That's it. There's no alternative. You know, if that's what you want, then, hey, knock yourself out, bro. You know, be all you can be. And some people will make that choice. Some people have made that choice. But I think it's a sad testament to the individuals themselves that's all they can see themselves as cutthroat mobsters or gangsters or wannabe gangsters or sureños or camaradas, which are really just, you know, wannabe gangsters. They're not the real guys. They're the support system. And that's all they'll ever be. That's the pinnacle of their life, being a camarada or a sureño.
What are the leadership dynamics in the organization?
You know, it really boils down to egalitarianism, right? People think I'm a leader. I was not. People thought I was like at the top of the mob. I'm the first one to tell you, I was just a button guy. You know, did I have some, what we call palabra, word? A little bit. You know, did I do some hits? Some. Did I participate in some stuff that changed the organization? Yeah. But I wasn't a leader. Joe Morgan wasn't the godfather. That doesn't exist in the organization. In fact, if somebody went and professed himself to a self-proclamation, I'm a leader of the organization now, I'm the godfather, they'd kill him first yard. First yard. They would whack him out because there are none. It was based on one man, one vote, majority rules, direct democracy, egalitarian. Everybody's equal. We're all equal. All of us are generals. But here's some of the cold, hard facts. Some members are more equal than others, right? And not everything takes a vote because everything's supposed to be done by vote and consensus, right? Like, hey, we think Joe Blow over there is informing. Well, let's take a vote. Okay. The majority says, yes, let's kill him. That's how it works. Sometimes. Sometimes it's just me, you, and Stan over here say, let's kill him. Let's whack him. Because we know he's an informant. Boom, boom, boom. We whack him out, right? And people, you know, they'll get their dander up. It'll shock them. Like, why did you hit that guy? There was no vote taken. Well, it had to be done immediately. It was imperative that he get hit immediately. And one of the phrases, like, leave it alone. That's in the order, leave it alone. In other words, it's mob business, leave it alone. And here is the harshest truth in the organization. Dead men have no support, right? So if a member gets killed, who's going to put their neck on the chopping block and say, you know what? That was wrong. I'm going to fight this till the end of my day. In fact, kill me because you killed this mobster. Nobody's going to do that. That opposition goes away in a couple of days when you get a piece of his territory, or, you know, you inherit something from him, or you just realize that you know, you're pretty close to getting yourself killed voicing opposition to the guys who killed him, because you just marked yourself by these guys. So, like, that loyalty, that doesn't exist. You know, are there some friends in the organization? Yeah, I'm sure there are. Sure, they're true believers. You know, they've drank the Kool-Aid. You know, they've taken it all in, and that's who they are. But it doesn't really exist. And that hierarchical structure, like you said, everybody's the same. There's more vocal individuals. There's more individuals that have some palabra, that have some influence, but leadership, no, that doesn't exist. And I think that's one of the downfalls of the organization too. That there's no centralized leadership, and that egalitarian principle always plays through and creates internal politics in the organization. And drug use. Those are the big downfalls of the organization. You know, how can a junkie, and I don't say that disparagingly, right? because I was a junkie. I won't speak about anything that I don't have a subjective experience on. And I'm not far removed from that. You know, I have 18 years sober. On the 22nd of December is 18 years sober. And I wouldn't forego that for anything. I wouldn't give that up for anything. But I'm not saying in a derogatory manner that these individuals have because they have substance abuse problems, which is more a delicate way to put it. So I'm going to retract that junkie thing. I don't want to hurl stones at people who are suffering. But that is one of the big drawbacks of the organization: drug use. Drug use. Think of individuals, how far they could go if they had clarity. The simple peace of mind of not having to worry about a fix or a pill or a drink or anything like that. I think that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls, is the lack of centralized leadership, the continuous infighting, politicking. And those are the banes of the organization, I think. I think it could do a lot more. It could be a lot more. It could be something that's monolithic, but I don't ever see it going beyond what it is now. A prison-centric organization that has influence in community gangs, because 99.9% of its membership is serving life in prison. And they recruit lifers. Which perpetuates that cycle. This is a prison gang. This is a prison gang. This is a prison gang. Until they can break that mold and extend their metastases beyond that. And I call it a metastasis because it really is a malignancy. Then they'll remain that.
The crimes that you've committed, sounds like they've affected you in ways now that you have a lot of remorse over it.
I do.
How did you process all of that and come to where you are today?
You know, I've done a lot of stuff. It's irretractable. It hurt so many people. And it wasn't until I felt that hurt. I mean, I went through the process of imagining what it would be to be the victim, or your family member was murdered, or somebody was assaulted or extorted, and it pales in comparison to experiencing that personally, and I have. I won't speak on the topic because just not something I'm going to do, but I've experienced loss. Not a result of my defection or anything like that, but I've experienced true loss. And that was the epifocal moment in my life where you get it, you know? You feel it. You feel the pain that they felt, and you feel it every day. It never goes away. It never diminishes, and you realize, I have done this to so many people. I have made people feel this sorrow and this loss. And I would never want to be the inflictor of that kind of pain again. Because it's never ending. It doesn't go away. It doesn't diminish. You learn to cope with it. You learn to cope with loss. But it doesn't go away. You know, and to think that I've done so much. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve that. A lot of people are accurate when they say that. He doesn't deserve to be free. You're right, I don't. But my redemption and my forgiveness is by the grace of God. I just had to accept that, you know? I'm not going to sit here and pontificate or go into a theological rant. I'm just not going to do that. That's not who I am. But when people question redemption, that's guaranteed to you. In my personal spiritual beliefs, it's guaranteed to you. All you have to do is accept it. So whether people accept that redemption or not, it doesn't bother me. I know I'm redeemed. And that's how I live in peace. Now, I have remorse, right? I have remorse for a lot of things I've done. Some of them I don't. I don't have remorse for some of the things that I participated in. Not even an iota of remorse. And I'm just going to be real about that. You know, there's one specific case where this individual killed some children. And he was himself murdered in San Quentin on death row. I don't feel bad about that guy losing his life. Her kids, you know. But I also understand that I'm nobody to cast judgment. You know, that's not our position as human beings, right? But yeah, I think it's when it impacts you. That's when you really understand. Because you can have all the book reading and courses and knowledge about remorse and victim reconciliation and the impact on victims. And I've taken all those courses in prison. I've done all that. I mean, I did that for years, right? I did therapy, and I still do therapy for PTSD, because you can't live that kind of lifestyle and believe it's not going to affect your psyche somehow, because it really does. I mean, it really does affect you, and I'm seeing the results of that now. I think I'm far advanced in my coping, but in victim awareness, yeah, hit home when it happened to me, you know, and that's when you really realize the impact. You know, you can voice and mouth those words. Yeah, I'm remorseful. I apologize for what I've done, but I truly do. To those people I hurt, and their family members, and their surviving friends and associates, they still feel that pain, and they can believe me or they won't. But I am sorrowful for a lot of things I've done in my life.
It's nice that you're able to come back in this type of situation and maybe give a clear picture to maybe younger men who are considering getting into that lifestyle, and showing them what the honest truth of it all is.
I think that, you know, those guys that are going to do it are going to do it. You know, I do a lot of work with some organizations that work with kids. And my message is this, like, I'm not here to tell you not to do it. I am not. Far be it from me to say, don't do this, when I did it myself. But these are the consequences of your action. Because every action has a consequence, positive or negative, right? This is what you have to look forward to. Brutality, betrayal, heartache, loneliness, you know, being separate from your woman, your family, your sons, your daughters, dying in prison. I don't think it gets much harsher than that. If that's what you want, like be all you can be. If you knock yourself out, you're going to hurt a lot of people along the way. Most importantly, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to deprive yourself and steal yourself of any future you had. I mean, I never would have thought that I could do what I do now, that I could be a subject matter expert, a lecturer, and do what I do, be an expert witness. I never thought it would translate into that. And it wasn't opportunistic. It just happened. You know, I just became what I became. You know, you call me informant, all that. Yeah, okay, that's good. But I'm happy. And I live a law-abiding life. I don't break the law. I might speed once in a while, but I'm even scared to do that, because if they catch me, my insurance rate's going to go up, you know? So I live a good life. And this is the life available to those kids, those participants now that are just on the fringe, those people in prison now, abiding by the code. You have an alternative. This is the alternative. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do what I have done. But there is an alternative. And there is peace. There is tranquility. You know, it's hard to find that in everyday life, and the hustle and the movement and the speed of everything going on. You may lack opportunity. You may be economically disadvantaged, but there's a way to live a better life. It doesn't have to be violence and drugs and killing.
But sometimes it's not a simple decision about, oh, this is a better life than that one. It has more to do with the good parenting you had, the good role models you had as a kid.
I think that the environmental influence has a lot to do with decision-making process that leads you to that generational influence. Some people see their uncles and their grandfathers and their fathers that are members, and I get that. You know, that's all they know. There's a thing in psychology called modeling, right? Where kids model the behavior that they witness, or another phrase called behavioral replication. They repeat that behavior, right? So we get it. It's ingrained in us. That's what we do. If it's drug use, it's drug use. There's a genetic link to addiction as well and substance abuse. I get all that. You could have all the psychosocial strikes in the world against you, but still make the right decisions. Like, let me take myself, for example. Traumatized as a kid, sexually abused, witnessed domestic violence from my house, emotionally detached father, and a permissive mother. And it destroyed me. It destroyed me. Environmental exposure to gangs through my brother and the neighborhood. Well, we lived in nice areas, Thousand Oaks, Cerritos. Those are nice bedroom communities. By anybody's estimation, they're nice places to live. But it destroyed me in my decision-making process. It crumbled my self-esteem. It affected my psyche where I wanted to go out and be that people pleaser. I wanted the acceptance, right? But for millions of people who experience the same thing, they go on to become cops, lawyers, doctors, bankers, garbage men, electrician, maintenance guys. They make the right decision. They never go out and kill people. They never stick a needle in their arm. They never ingest a drug. They never hurt people. Because of who they are. And I think that's when that parental exposure kicks in. You learn how to cope. For our culture, dealing with trauma, it's not even spoken of. You don't even whisper those words because it's not masculine. It's emasculating, as a matter of fact. And to seek out therapy for those things, it's sacrilegious. Number one, we can't afford it, you know. Number two, it's like therapy. Yeah, I'll give you therapy. Here's a chancla. I'll hit you with a chancla. That's therapy, you know. But now, with, you know, the community and society being so cognizant of the impacts of trauma and those psychosocial strikes that have affected so many people in a negative way, there's so much support out there. In fact, when we're in Pelican Bay SHU, and I thought one day I want to parole. I was an active mobster, and there were no programs to participate in. So there was a psychologist by the name of Craig Noble, Dr. Craig Noble. He would debrief SEAL teams after they came in after their operations, right? And he would walk the tier once a month as a part of this resolution of Pelican Bay, the Madrid versus Gomez resolution. They would send psychs in once a month. And Dr. Noble would come by, and he was an engaging guy. And I told him, I said, Dr. Noble, how do we participate in NA and AA and participate in therapy if it's not available to us? So he cocked his head for a minute. He says, I'll tell you what. They have anything on the prison cable or any books you can read or any kind of literature you can get? I says, yeah, there's a ton of it. I have a ton of it. He says, well, submit book reports to me. Read the book, submit it to him. I'll pull you out and we'll talk about it. And this was at a time when it was unheard of to go to the psych. You can't go to the psych. Not in prison. You cannot go. It's like a strike. It's a sign of weakness, number one, and a strike against you, number two. But I thought in my position as a mobster, I had enough influence, and the people knew me well enough that it was well-intentioned, because it was well-intentioned. I'm just trying to get ready for the board at some point where I'm going to go to the board and say, look, I did participate in this. I did do therapy as unorthodox as it was. So I started going to the psych. And he would talk to me, give me an intelligence, IQ test, all that stuff, right? And he said the same thing. He said, you're surprisingly intelligent. He said, why are you doing this? And I told him, I said, there's nothing else I can do. I already got life sentences. And I can't really talk about it, Doc. He says, there's another way. And it stood in my head. It stood in my head that here's a man who's professional that has compassion enough to make time for me and suggest an alternate route. He didn't say lock up or debrief or PC, none of that. Those words never entered our exchange. but he had an impact on me. He had an impact on me. And I remember him for what he did. And then, surprisingly, other people started going as well within my pod. They started going and seeing Dr. Noble, and I was surprised to see that one of them got out. He was a good friend of mine. I see him now on social media at times. He's an activist, and I'm happy for him that he didn't debrief. He was never really a mobster to begin with. He became associated later, but living a good life. I'm happy for him. So some people make the right decision. Some people see the alternative path, not to immerse themselves in that lifestyle. Because you could be on the fringe and exposed to that and never pick up a knife for them, unless you're called to do so. And then, then you go. And when you go, it's like you've opened up Pandora's box. You've jumped into the abyss. And that's really what it is. When you do that first hit, you're going to be called for the second one. And then it gets good to you. Like you like that feeling.
It grows on you?
It grows on you. It gets easy. And I think that's where you lose your humanity. Your humanity when you're looking forward to doing the hits. When you jump at the chance to do them. It evaporates slowly. Like ether. It goes away. Your humanity is really...
And what is it, adrenaline?
I think it's the adrenaline, the recognition, the acknowledgement, all those things that you're lacking in your life, right? You somehow interpret that as acceptance, as approval. Oh, you whacked that guy good. You did good, bro. You did good, little brother. When you're not a Cartel, they call you little brother, right? They used to. I don't know if they still do that. But that was a phrase they used. You did good, little brother. You did good. I was like, he called me brother. This is a mobster, called me little brother. I remember that phrase when I did my first hit. And it was like everything. It was like a medal.
How old were you on your first one?
My first hit, I was 22 years old. No, 21 years old. I did my first hit at DVI. I explained that. I was a guy from Angel from Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And I did that first hit. My first day on the yard at DVI, they asked me to do that. After that, it was, like I said, easy. They got easy, and that's the terrible part. And then making decisions. You're so far detached. Like they ask you for a vote. Hey, so and so's got to go. What do you say? Yeah, whatever. And when you really look at it, when you take it down to its molecular level, you've just cast a vote to kill somebody. Whether it's effectuated or not, could take years, but he's forever on the lista after that. You asked me a while ago before we started filming, like, are they still after you? Yeah, they're still after me. That's a never-ending thing. There's nothing I could do to make amends with the organization.
No, but when I invite you to come back, I have to consider the danger this puts you in.
That's why you came to me this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no dummy. That was a one-time thing coming to you. From now on, henceforth, you'll always come to me. And I'll always be a different spot if we decide to do this in the future. But I appreciate you making that accommodation and coming out to me. I truly do. And I know you understand my situation, so that threat's always there. I have to keep moving. I have to maintain my vigilance.
Is law enforcement involved in protecting you?
Some degree. I have numerous agents on speed dial. And that's all I'll say. I think that going into this is a slippery slope.
But where you're located now, do you get recognized at all?
No.
Yeah,
nobody in the world will recognize me out there.
Right.
No. You wouldn't even imagine where I'm at. But it's beautiful. It's tranquil. I have peace there. And I think that threat will always exist. And I I think it's important that that message gets across, that there is peace. There is peace in this decision-making process. It's not. I get it. That emotional decision to leave the organization is so impactful. I cried for 2 weeks.
Really?
First day I left, I wanted to go back. Like, no, take me back. I don't want to be a rat or a PC. And but it abated. It abated slowly but surely. But the first 2 weeks was turmoil, like emotionally crying. I was a wreck. I remember I flushed my knife, the one I kept keistered for those 5 years. I flushed it, and I flushed my handcuff key, because I went everywhere with that. And I remember I went out to the yard after that, the next morning, and I had like an anxiety attack. I thought, oh, I forgot my knife in the cell. I don't have my knife with me. And I realized you flushed it, you know. But it was such a cathartic thing to be free of all that. After a couple of months, it got easier. I mean, the sting of being called an informant and a rat and a PC and a coward, that lasted for a couple of years, you know. And now it's like, you're judging me? Okay. You know, you're entitled to your opinion. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I realize that a difference of opinion doesn't mean that we're enemies. It just means that you have a difference of opinion. That's who you see me as, and that's okay, because the reality is you're not in my life. You're not a significant person that means something and is meaningful to the community. The only people that call me this are the individuals who are part of that subculture. And look, I get it. I betrayed the code. But really, is it a code? Is that what you live for? Is that what you're going to die for? And the final analysis, will you be the same guy that you want me to be? Take a bullet in my head and say, okay, I broke the rules, kill me? No, I'm kicking and fighting and yelling and all that when you come to get me. You know, I'm not taking it like a man. You know, no, I'm just being real. You know, I'm running. Look, this is survival. And you call it whatever you want to, but we have an instinctual survival mechanism within us. And I heard the footsteps. I seen the writing on the wall. I knew I was going to get whacked. You know, that's why I left. You think I'm stupid? I'm going to stay there? Hell no. I committed murders for the organization. I sacrificed my life for this organization. I willingly killed people and accepted those life sentences so another member could go free. But I was responsible. I did those murders. And here I was dealing with politics. Individuals who wanted to kill me for no reason. I wasn't a rat. I wasn't a coward. I was none of those things. They wanted to kill me. And I saw the writing on the wall. So there's a lot of speculation as to why I left. It was that, you know, I started getting anxiety attacks. There was the thing where they wanted to kill kids. It had a big impact on me. They wanted to kill family members if they couldn't get to you. And that was tossed around in the organization. That was huge for me. That was huge. Like, how can you kill innocent people? And that's one thing I'll say about the organization. One of the things that I was most proud of, that they don't kill normal individuals, average Joes and family members. They don't go after those people. And I think it's one of the things that sets the Mexican Mafia aside from the rest of those organizations, that they still have this moral streak within them. And for me, that's what defined the organization, is that there was this moral streak within it, that they wouldn't do certain things. And that holds true today. That holds true today.
All right. Rene, thank you so much for coming back.
You're welcome.
You're always fascinating.
Well, thank you for coming to me.
Perhaps we'll do more.
Perhaps. Peace out.
Thank you.
I'm in the middle of the mountains, at a river running wild. I'm as peaceful as a shadow and carefree as a child. The sunlight singing to me a soft and gentle song. singing soak it all in, darling, for you're right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, but came back before too long. Right where you belong. You've been to hell and back again. Nobody knows your story, at least not the full one, 'cause you've learned you can't trust just anyone. Life has dealt some heavy blows, some have made you strong, but you shouldn't have to work so hard to find where you belong. Find where you belong. Find where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, you've been down far too long. Let's find where you belong. Steeple, maybe a state of mind. It may be the furthest thing from what you think you'll find. But listen to that voice inside, it won't guide you wrong. Trust in time, my friend, you'll wind up right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. There will still be valleys, but you won't stay too long. For there's a place your heart can heal. There's a place where you can feel you're right where you